Right, folks, good morning, viewers and listeners. I'm Gerry Mcfarlane, and this is Beneath the Surface. Another, as you continue this series 2 of Beneath the Surface, as we bring to you and discuss and chat with all the members of the Tobago House of Assembly, in fact, most of them. And we started earlier this month, and we're going to end this thing on the 6th of December. And this morning, we have the distinct pleasure, I personally have the real pleasure of chatting with Councillor Tashia Burris.
Yes.
And Miss Burris, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
I've been looking forward to you coming to this program.
Good morning, Mr. Mcfarlane, and good morning to the Tobago Updates family. Good morning to Tobago and everybody who's tuned in wherever you are. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Okay, well, this we're gonna get straight into some issues here, and this program will be very inviting and talking about some hot issues. And
Okay.
tourism is a big issue.
Yes,
on
always.
this island,
Always.
Tell us a little bit about your how you're managing so far. Just to start, how you managing, what your responsibilities are.
Oh, so I think I have one of the larger divisions that make up the Tobago House of Assembly that encompasses tourism, culture, a new addition in Antiquities, and transportation. How am I managing? I'm surviving. I think that's the best way to put it. I just like my colleagues, not having any real experience managing or leading a division. I think a lot of us have very new political careers, but I have been working since I was 17 years old. Funny enough, I used to work with the former Secretary of Tourism, Ms. Tracy Davidson Celestine. I actually worked at the Department of Youth Affairs when she was the Assistant Secretary there. That was my last Tobago House of Assembly job. So I've worked in public sector, private sector, and what straddles two of the sectors basically for my entire working life, and I think those types of experiences have helped me walk into this role a little bit more prepared, I think, to treat with the challenges that we are facing, certainly from the aspect of recovering the tourism sector post-COVID, as well as trying to transform the division into one of performance and productivity. That has been the hardest battle.
Yeah, I could well imagine. We'll get into that a little later. But you always come across fit and really prepared to handle whatever challenges came up in your division. But I want you to tell me first how you got prepared for all these things. I mean, I knew you as a young girl, a student, and so on. And how you were prepared for this? You prepared originally that you're going to get involved in politics or law or something like that?
That politics was never my path. I studied my bachelor's, so I have a bachelor's in information systems, and I have a master's in international marketing management. I always felt drawn to the tourism sector. I used to work at the port, but my first job was actually in youth work, and I had a deep love for working with young people. So I worked with the YMCA. That was my first job. And then I moved on to the Department of Youth Affairs for a number of years. And after that, I started working at the Port Authority. Prior to getting into office, I worked at the Police Complaints Authority. So I've always been working with people and surrounded by the public in different ways, shapes, and forms. But for me personally, I never looked at politics as a natural progression for me. I always felt that I should always reserve my voice to speak up on issues in general. I mean, if an administration is doing well, I would be the first to give them kudos and say, yes, job well done. That was successful. I'm happy that it was successful, because once we are successful, everybody is successful. And certainly if things don't go so well and I felt that, it could have been done better or handled better, I should be able to say, well, yes, that wasn't done so well. But I mean, aside from even just saying it didn't happen so well, also giving solutions or giving recommendations or suggestions as to how it could be done better. And I always felt like if I could keep my voice kind of independent of choosing sides. But for me, that change kind of came about in around 2019, thereabouts. And for me, getting into politics is, I always put it down to God. Is God put me here? Because left up to me, I would not choose politics. Left up to me, I think I had a very, very quiet, contented life and lifestyle before I got into politics. But I felt like if, God put a calling on my life, and that is how I ended up in politics. And literally, I kind of heard his voice in my head saying, this is what I have for you. Not necessarily promising that the journey would be easy. And certainly, by all accounts, from then to now, the journey has not been easy. But I would say that,
but you're not running away from the
it
challenges.
has been the greatest challenge of my life. It continues to be the greatest challenge of my life. And I think every day that I've started in this job, I've had moments where I felt like giving up. I've had moments when I was ready to write that resignation letter. I've had moments when I've expressed it out loud that I'm ready to walk away, because I feel like if I give so much and I'm so committed, and if I don't get that same level of commitment from the people around me, it really drains me. I could only do as much as I could humanly do. But if you're depending on other people to do their part, because no man is an island, a secretary is not a division. A division has many moving parts, and everybody sees the face of the secretary. And if something goes right, sometimes the secretary is not even mentioned. Everybody else takes the kudos and stuff, and that's fine. That's part and parcel of the thing, But when something goes wrong, the secretary's name is the first name that is called. And the reality is that sometimes the secretary is nowhere close to where the thing happened in terms of what went wrong. And in order to fix it, it doesn't even involve the secretary either. It involves someone below the secretary who just simply is not doing what they're supposed to do. And that has been the biggest challenge for me coming into a Tobago House of Assembly that I think still grapples with professionalism and still grapples with productivity. And it's a beast that we have to wrestle to the ground almost daily. I mean, for me, it's a learning process in terms of even how to lead, because sometimes you're tempted to let your emotions get the best of you. You want to cuss people, you want to, get on bad and whatever. But I think I've been doing well so far in terms of not letting people see that side of me. But I'm really honestly kind of hoping that the persons who work in the Tobago House of Assembly understand that they are not aliens from Mars. The people that they have to impact are their fellow Tobagonians, their family, their friends, their neighbors' children, the society as a whole. And if we talk about wanting to progress Tobago, it's not 16 representatives on this side of the administration who have to progress Tobago. It's all of Tobago. It's all of us have to get together to do the work that needs to be done. And simply just absolving ourselves personally from responsibility and saying, well, always a politician, always a secretary, or that's not enough, because a secretary could only do so much. It really has to take a team effort, and it's getting back to that place where people understand that they're part of that team. And only when we work together can we be successful together.
Yeah, you always have a very outspoken way about you from small, and very candid about your views.
Yes.
And straightforward, even if you burn people along the way.
Oh gosh.
But let us start for a little bit from when you're young, how you were brought up, and how your parents maybe prepared you for this kind.
Oh gosh.
Prepared you for life, I should say.
Well, my father has really been, I think as I grew, I realized that I have a very homogeneous mixture of both my parents. So if anybody knows my mother, they can see my mother in me in terms of that outspokenness and that being very candid and straightforward. And even when I get a little upset, they see Patsy in me. Yes. But my father, however, was really the one who I think molded me into this path. I don't think that he necessarily saw me going into politics, but one of the things that he cultivated very early in me was this love for reading. So in terms of him religiously buying all the papers every day, and I would sit and I would learn to read the papers and then read the papers religiously after him every single day. And then we would have discussions about what I read. We would talk about current topics. We would talk about what's going on in the world.
Your father was self-employed?
No, my father was a fire officer for many years. So he, really had a love for reading. And the one thing that we had to watch in the house was the 7 o'clock news. Regardless of what you were doing, you had to stop what you was doing to watch the news. And from a very young age, it cultivated this love in me for, generally learning about the world around me, learning about Tobago, learning about Trinidad, learning about this country that we live in. And a lot of what I learned about this country, I didn't learn in textbooks, you know, because the history of Tobago is not largely taught in schools. However, when I was in school, and, you know, I used to go to Scarborough RC School, one of the best schools on the island of Tobago, and I had some of the best teachers, like Mrs. Mcfarlane and Miss Dillon and, you know, Miss Spencer and Miss Waldron and Mr. Phillips and all of these teachers, Sir Acqui, may he rest in peace. And they really kind of, aside from teaching the curriculum, they kind of encouraged us to also learn about Tobago. And that was the beauty about, I think, growing up back then. And then obviously they encouraged a lot of extracurricular and co-curricular activities as well. So my father is the one who I would debate with. Yes.
All rounded.
So my dad was the one that I would debate with. So we would have long conversations, hours long, about different topics, and we would move from one topic to the next. So that is why it comes natural for me to just be able to carry on conversations and carry on conversations for any length of time, because I really had that experience growing up with my dad. So when I went to him and said, you know, I want to go into politics, he was the first person to jump up and say, yes, I'm behind you, you know, I'm backing you, you know, 1001%. And he has been one of my biggest cheerleaders from that day to now. I mean, you know, so I always
remember you at your valedictorian
yes.
at Bishop High School.
What do you remember
about that? What do you remember about that occasion?
Still I Rise. I used that poem from Maya Angelou in my valedictory speech that day. And, you know, I could distinctly remember being all of 16 years old and trying to project myself into the future, asking myself, where would I be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And even that little girl in her wildest imagination could not imagine me being in the place that I am now. But it also feels that this is very, very purposeful. That is why I always talk about God's hand on my life and the fact that he has just simply been leading me throughout my entire life. All of my experiences have contributed to the person that I am today. Every single one of my work experiences have been brought to bear in me trying to do all that I have to do to get the thing going and to be successful. And, you know, recognizing, you know, that this is not it for me. You know, I don't honestly perceive that I would have a long political career. And this is me. You know, I mean, people already start to ask me, you know, you're thinking about general again and, you know, THA. And I'm like, no, I'm not thinking about these things because I like my peace. You know, I give myself these huge tasks because I feel that I can't fail. I can't fail because if I fail, Tobago fails. And if not me, who? And that is as arrogant as I would get, because I feel that I'm put here in this time to do a particular mission. And I believe
that kind of you know, focus and determination.
I need to
especially
finish
with the leadership.
I need to finish the mission. That's the most important thing. Whether you like me or not doesn't matter. Whether I like you or not doesn't matter, because my like is for me. But all I want is people to understand that everything here is bigger than us. It's not about who did it. It's about all of us collectively doing it together. Because success is a collective. It's not a singular thing. It's not a one-person show. Nobody does anything by themselves. We have to get where we have to go if everybody gets on the same page. And the faster we get on the same page is the faster we get to where we need to go. And that's the simple thing that I want to teach. The simple lesson in all that we do. I want to be able to retire from politics in 2 years' time and live in a Tobago where the people are happy, where the basic needs of every single person who lives on this 65, out of this 65,000 plus population on this 116 square miles is met, where people have options. They could work for the THA or they could work for the private sector, where we have a university where our children don't have to leave Tobago to go and study in Trinidad or study somewhere else, that they could stay home and they could get a high standard of education just like anywhere else in the world, that we can balance wanting to have a tourism sector with preserving our culture, preserving who we are, preserving nature. still being able to offer the best of us to the people who choose to visit us, that we have zero crime because we have rebuilt the family institutions, rebuilt the communities, that the church once again becomes the center of society the way it used to be. That is the Tobago that I want to live in.
Yeah.
And if we could get there very quickly, I'll be very happy, you know, so I could
Tashia,
take a rest.
you have to, your fantastic ambitions and plans on what you would like to see this Tobago look like in the future, now and going forward. You know, it has to be accompanied by some particular plan.
Yes.
How you work, for example, you have a public service, it's public service you're doing already, you know. People call it politics at that level.
Yeah.
But how you work with your public servants to achieve some of these beautiful ambitions that you have.
I would tell you, like, and this might be the most controversial thing that I would probably say, so I'm going to put out the disclaimer very, very early. I think that the public service needs to be abolished, honestly, because I think that the creature that the public service has become can no longer serve the needs of the society that we have to grow. Now, I'm not saying fire all the public servants. That's not what I'm saying. I'm
I would prefer to say totally reform the public service.
I don't even want to say reform. I say abolish, because the reason why I say abolish is because when you think about how technology has evolved, it used to take 20, 30 years for new technologies to come in and replace what was there. Now technology is being churned over every 2 or 3 years. Every time you see a phone gets a new update every couple months. When you look at iPhone, the iPhone situation, you have iPhone down to however many versions of iPhone now, because technology is turning over faster. The thing about the public services is the public service, and you now have artificial intelligence. When you look at the public service was created way back when there was no technology around. And now what you're trying to do is retrofit the public service to be responsive to the evolving needs of society and be responsive to the evolving situation when it comes to public administration. But the reality is this: it is no longer simply acceptable for someone to come into the public service with 5 O-levels as a clerk 1 and get to the highest levels in the public service without ever having the opportunity to get more qualified or to get exposed or to get to utilize newer technologies. I mean, when you look at how the public service is, it's almost like an unwieldy animal, and we're trying to cut it and contrive it to fit into new realities. The reality is, for the Tobago space, maybe what we require is a service that is able to evolve with the ever-changing needs of the administration.
But until such time that the Constitution don't provide for the public service and the administration of the public service, maybe you have to work the public service to get what you want out of the public service, maybe within the law, or maybe stretching the law to some extent, because the Constitution provides for that, and that is why I would prefer to see a serious reform needed in the public service. And it must be public service centered in the true meaning of the word.
I have a question, right? Who makes up the public service? Not people?
Yeah, people.
We're not talking about robots here. It's not about going behind a panel and programming someone to all of a sudden smile when people come to the desk and answer the phone pleasantly, and to move the things along the line in a timely manner so that things are not piling up and stuff. The things that we come up against as obstacles is largely related to the humans in the system. How do you change the humans if you have entrenched certain types of behavior or culture them in a particular way over a period of time? In other words, it feels like if who want to walk and who ain't feel like walking still getting paid. That's what it is. So any amount of law changing and that kind of thing might only treat with things, I think, in a very cosmetic way. But until, one, we make productivity, the conversation about productivity, pretty much the center of what we try to do. How do we measure productivity? We have to also look at reward schemes, because certainly I think public servants feel like if they're not seen compared to contract workers, they're not remunerated on the same scale. They feel like if, they're almost like at the bottom of the ladder in terms of benefits and that kind of thing. And those things are valid. Those are very, very valid. So when you talk reform, all of that has to be in the conversation in terms of being able to pay people what they're worth, or pay them based on what they have to do, the kind of decisions they have to make, the expectations that we have of their role. But in addition to that, that has to also be tied to productivity. We can't just simply say we're going to pay you based on the rank that you have reached, but then you get there and you do nothing. That doesn't make any sense,
Your
because
service has
at
to be
that level,
measured,
exactly,
and you have to be accountable.
exactly, so that productivity and accountability have to be in the room at the same time. And as long as we're not talking productivity and accountability, then we're not really getting anywhere fast. We're just literally kind of pleading with people. We're begging people, oh gosh, well, do this, do that, and it takes so much. It takes so much from us to get people to do simple tasks. Nothing is complicated. People who exist at the level of most divisions are not doing complicated things. They are doing the same things over and over again. And I understand that fatigue can set in. You could get tired of doing the same thing. So what we also have to talk about is, how do we transition people out of where they're at to where they ideally want to be? People have to understand, what is the thing that makes me passionate? Because I don't expect a Clerk 1 to stay, or a BOA 1 as a contract officer, to stay as a BOA 1 for the next 15 years. That there's no growth in a person in that. If you're doing the same thing over and over for 15 years.
The same thing in the same way.
Yes. So we have to, I think it all starts with the person. We have to aspire to be more. Because before I became a secretary, I was an administrative officer in the Police Complaints Authority. But I felt that that was not the apex of where my life had to go. I did my master's, I did my bachelor's, and I was still on the hunt for other opportunities wherever they cropped up. And sometimes you may have to come out of your comfort zone. When I was working on the port, I was permanent. I left that because I felt like if I got to the place where I couldn't give anymore and it was really draining, you know. So sometimes when the balance is more negative than positive, you have to decide what is good for you as a person. So I walked away from a permanent job because I felt that that was not necessarily the apex of me. And I can tell you, after being a secretary, I could probably go and sell fruits by the side of the road and be very, very happy. Because you know what? It's not even about your position in life. Positions are temporary. It's not going to be on your gravestone. Your gravestone will have your name, the date you were born, the date that you died, and probably rest in peace, or we love you, or something like that. But it doesn't tell the story of who you are. You have the pen. You write the story. And I feel like if, as people, we've stopped dreaming, we've stopped aspiring to be more, that we've just satisfied ourselves with simply doing the day-to-day things. And we don't dream anymore. You know, when you're young, you're watching TV, and I wanted to be a million things when I was a child. I wanted to be a lifeguard because I used to watch Baywatch, and then I read about Greenpeace, so I wanted to be an environmentalist. And there was a point in time my dad wanted me to be an actuary, and I didn't even know what that was. But, you know, I went from, you know, a lot of different things, you know. But I realized you always end up where you need to be. Yeah?
They're telling us we have to go for a break now because the line's heating up in the place.
Oh, boy.
But we go for a quick break and we come back with us and we continue chatting with Tashia Burris, called Councillor Tashia Burris, and we Secretary for Transport and Tourism and Antiquities and all that stuff. When we come back from the break, we continue this.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawning.
Yeah, we're back, folks, and we continue chatting with Tashia Burris here, Councillor Tashia Burris. You know, we have to look at the level of productivity in a real serious way, you know, and we have to do that before we get to some of the main issues we want to talk about. Because without dealing with these things up front and to be frontal with it, you know, we just kind of spinning top in mud. All your brilliant ideas, not just from you, but other secretaries and even some members of the public service in their way they want to reform the service as well. You know, we have to tackle the thing head on.
Yes, we do.
And we have to find a way to get people, whether we were bringing a consultant to look at the whole thing. Look how much studies has been done about the public service over these years, since I could remember, and start looking into politics and the administration of the country, and then the emergence of the THA and all of that. So many things has been done. Reggie Dumas and a set of other people. There's a minister called Gordon Draper and so on, who are looking seriously at reforming public service. And I don't think it has gotten very far. What people has become more too comfort in the level of productivity.
Right.
You know, that is almost second to none. You don't see this level of unproductivity anywhere in the world that I could remember.
Well, if the Tobago House of Assembly was someone's private business, it crashed by now because
Yeah, they would not
I
tolerate
mean,
that. They would not tolerate
And
that.
it's not even about I mean, when you look at productive hours, and let's just make a quick calculation, right? You're supposed to come to work at 8 and leave at 4. Now, I don't keep those hours. My hours are strange hours. Some days I work 12 and 16 hours, some days but I'm always working. I work every day. So even if I'm not
Whether
in
in the
office, whether I'm
office.
in office or not, I'm always working because there's always something to do. There's always something to do. But when you look at the average member of staff, they're supposed to work between the hours of 8 and 4. Most people don't get to work till 9. Because why? We have to drop off children, all of these things, you're in traffic, whatever. So you get to work at 9. And then when you get to work at 9, you have to have breakfast. Breakfast is between 9 and 10. So you're eating, you're checking your phone, you're the alignment by your desk, whatever. So 10 o'clock, you might start work. You might pick up a physical paper or a file or something like that. But then by 11:30, you're looking to go for lunch. You're ready to pick up your bag and go. 11:30, you go out the road. You go and stand up in a line, you go in the bank, you go and buy something, you go and hang out with 2 people. By 12:30, you're back in the office, but you bring back your lunch to eat. So then that means you take another hour from 12:30 to 1:30 to eat said lunch. So lunch is from 11:30 to 1:30. And then at 1:30, you might pick up another file, you might move another piece of paper, but by 2:30, you're ready to go and pick up them children. So how many productive hours have you gotten in one day? Essentially, probably 2. So when you look at an 8-hour average workday, and you can actually see that there are some people who do nothing for the entire day or only get 2 productive hours, and there are some officers who I can say work that entire 8 hours work, but the disparity between the number of those people versus the rest of people is too large. You cannot in an organization have too many people having too much idle time because you don't get paid for idle time. You get paid for productive hours. And that is one of the changes that has to happen in terms of how people view their work. People
Yeah,
have
but
to be...
it has to be measured. It has to be...
And that is what I was about to
yeah,
say. So
it
for
has to be-
example, if it is that, and that is why, you know, we have to make the whole thing, there's a scientific element to the whole thing as well. Because if a clerk has 10 files on the desk, and depending on the complexity of the files, you're going to take maybe like 20 minutes to treat with a file, then it means that in any given day, you're supposed to be treating with 15 files, 20 files in any given day if you're doing productive work. But then you have some situations where people have files on the desk for months, and they pile up so much, they just put them in a drawer and forget them. And it's until something happens or somebody requires the file or until somebody makes a query that you realize that this thing has been sitting on someone's desk for so long, but that also speaks to lack of supervision. So there's a number of challenges that exist within the system. But I would say that, again, it all comes down to the person. Because the individual. Because at the end of the day, you could put a lot of rules in place. You could start to do measurements, you could do electronic clocking system, you could put cameras over people's desks to see what they're doing, you could ban phones in the workplace, you could do all of that.
The supervision and the
You could do
measurement is lacking.
all of that. But again,
Still.
I can tell you that when I was in primary school and I was being taught penmanship by Mrs. Dillon, if that F was not straight, that L didn't go all the way to the top of the line, you were sent back to do it. And you did it until you got it right. And that you learned to take pride in the work that you did. And I think that that is what we are missing. We no longer have pride in what we do. So that the thing could go halfway. The thing don't have to go at all. It's not me getting costs. I getting costs right now for heritage payments. A secretary don't sign checks. A secretary don't work in the accounts department. I don't work in registry. But when you find out what is at the crux of the problem, several people are not doing what they're supposed to do. Several things fell down over the course of a particular period of time, and that has led to a particular situation. A secretary is now asked to fix that. But if people were simply doing what they were supposed to do from day one, we would not have this issue. And for me, I think that we have to learn.
The client not sending in the invoices and the requests
Yeah,
on
but
time,
even
the
if
bills on
yeah,
time.
but even if that is the case, right? There are people who have. Why are those payments being held up because somebody else didn't do what they were supposed to do? there's no excuse. There's none. And I'm not even trying to proffer an excuse. It should not be happening. It shouldn't be happening. Because everything that we do impacts on this Tobago. The Tobago House of Assembly is a small subset of the island of Tobago as a whole. And if the Tobago House of Assembly is largely inefficient, and that inefficiency can be fixed, it means that Tobago will be better for it. Because all the people who have given us goods and services, who are waiting on their money to buy groceries, to buy books for a child, to pay a medical bill, to pay rent, they shouldn't have to wait 6 months to get paid. Somebody who has a small business who is waiting on a payment shouldn't wait 6 months to get their money, because we never pay market value for anything. When I take 6 months to get my check, you really think I charging you $10? Nah, you will pay $20 because I have to wait. And we pay out of our nose for those efficiencies. And it's cheaper for us to fix those efficiencies because we will save more money in the long run. But again, it comes back to people. Are we taking pride in ourselves as people? And for me, I take pride in what I do. I'm not saying that everything that I do is perfect. Trust me, there are many things that I've done that don't ever come out the way that I hope. But certainly, I give my all. I come to work every day giving 100%, even if I don't feel 100%. Because at the end of the day, it's not about me. I always think about the fact that if I don't show up, something is delayed. If I don't sign something, someone else can't do something that is critical to them. If I don't make a decision on something, it holds back somebody else. And everything is time sensitive. Everything is mission critical. We don't have time to waste. So the quicker we could get on board with where we want Tobago to go, this idea of the greatest little island on the planet, people have to live, eat, and breathe that.
Yes,
and if we start to breathe that, if we start to say, no, my job is to sweep this floor, and I had to make sure I could see my face in this floor, because I take pride in the work that I do. So everybody pass, they go say, yeah, it's really Miss Burris pass and sweep that floor, because they know the floor is well swept. And that is the same attitude that we have to bring to everything we do, no matter how small. Yeah?
Yeah. But let us go quickly to some other areas, because you're running out of time. But I think what you said have to be said, and people have to understand that they have a role to play in developing this little island.
Yes.
It had to be the best island on the planet.
Yes.
You know, your part of your responsibility deals with quite a few 4 big things, and I like how there's a linkage between all these: the antiquities,
Yes.
the culture, the transport, the tourism. I love that. But how can you? Let's deal with culture. How can you make or develop cultural activities into a more socio-economic event? So, not just people going to perform, but have an event. Like, you have other events, your cultural events, your Blue Food is a major cultural event mixed with agriculture and processing and so on. Activity. So you're going to continue doing things like that to promote not just having a cultural performance, but making it socio-economically benefit to the community.
I would tell you that I think that is the idea, the thought process behind most people when they hear culture. They only think performance, or they think entertainment. Culture is not just performance and entertainment. So to answer the question that you posed in terms of what more can we do to encourage people to participate in culture, one of the policy shifts that I have put in place in terms of the work of the Tobago Festivals Commission, especially with this new board, is that their focus would be on growing our indigenous festivals and giving support to new products that are cropping up in this space, whether those new products are created by other divisions like the Lamb Fest, for example, or whether they're private persons who are coming in the space and doing their own events, how we provide support to those kinds of activities. But really, how do we amplify what is indigenous to Tobago? Because again, we have to put a spotlight on what makes us unique. So for example, our harvest festivals, our fisherman festivals, these things have been around for a number of years. Do we know the history behind it? Do we know the foundation of why it was created? I mean, they have evolved over the years to become huge events in communities and very, very popular in the Tobago space. But I think that we have a responsibility to ensure that there is preservation of the aspects of that relate to the history of the thing, And two, we have to look at the fact that we have these products that are already there that could become economic drivers, that could bring communities together, that could show up the fabric of our society in a stronger way. And how do we provide the kind of support that is necessary to ensure that they evolve in a positive way? That's one. Secondly, the role of culture in general. And again, I think most people think that culture is just simply entertainment. So there are two different aspects I'm talking about here. One, the entire orange economy and the ecosystem of what the orange economy looks at. So you look at the different types of performance culture. You look at talent, and Tobago being an incubator of talent. And that's the work of TPAC to be an incubator of talent, because we have talent all over. Some of it, people go to school and they hone their talents. Other places, it's in its rawest form. How do we dig out that raw talent? How do we expose them to like-minded individuals? How do we get iron to sharpen iron? And then how do we export those talents to the world? Because we don't want to
market it as a marketable product
and export, because you don't want all the talent to stay here. You want to be able to, because if Winston Duke had grown up in Tobago, he would have never been in Black Panther, because somebody would have told him that he should go and be a doctor or a lawyer. So we have to recognize that even amongst us, among our children and among our peers, there are people who have particular kind of talents that are not mainstream. These people will not be made to go into mainstream jobs. How do we encourage these people to hone that talent? How do we expose them to the places where that talent could now redound to their benefit? And I mean, people like Winston Duke, I think, are a story that needs to be told. Sometimes we literally have to send our children in places where people could recognize the talent they have, and they could go on that path and go on their stream. But my colleague has talked about reforming the education system that speaks about, harnessing talents of young people very early and putting them in certain tracks, technical track, non-technical, sporting, creative. So that is some work that we have to do at that level, as well as culture and antiquities comes into the conversation there. How are we preserving our culture, both tangible and intangible? Because we are losing our living legends.
You want to describe antiquities for a lot of people?
So antiquities encompasses that idea of tangible, as I said, that what you could touch, feel, move with, living monuments to history and heritage and culture, and the intangible, the songs, the dances, the things that you can't necessarily put your hand on and touch and feel, and everything that makes up Tobago's history, who we are, where we've come from, from the time that we were discovered to the time we were fought over, to the time that we were next to Trinidad, and even now as we're evolving as a people, a repository of all of that information. So Antiquities is concerned with...
So you have a specialist now in the division dealing with that?
We have a technical advisor who is responsible for building out our Antiquities division in particular, because we have to put an administrative...
That is a welcome thing, is a new approach to having greater respect and understanding of that little...
Well, when you look at how Antiquities as an area has aided tourism, and the best example would be the pyramids in Egypt. When people think about the country of Egypt, the first thing that comes to mind is the pyramids. And the pyramids are a living, monument to antiquities. It's a gigantic set of antiquities, which are relics, which are artifacts. And how do we now, as Tobago, we have beautiful history all around us, from sugar mills to water wheels to the aqueduct to old churches to those old clapboard houses to all these copper pots that used to boil sugar. All of these things are in and around the space, and a lot of people may not be aware of the historical value of these things. But someone, and not just someone, there's a whole market of people that visit destinations to simply immerse themselves in their history and their culture. And by having this Antiquities unit created for us to now take a very proactive approach to the preservation, restoration in some cases, because there are some instances where they're in dilapidated condition, and we have to work to restore these things. Even getting persons who may have some of these artifacts on private land to understand the value of what they would have, and for them to see and, assist with that preservation as well.
It is so sad that some of these things were taken up as scrap iron.
Yes. So even putting these policies in place to protect what we have so that people understand how valuable it is. I mean, there are some people who believe that the past is in the past and it should stay in the past. But if we don't have an idea of what happened and where we came from, then we may not have an idea of where we should be going or where we should go. And we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past if we're not sure what happened before our time. And there is value. There's always value in being able to tell our stories.
Always dream of having one of those, either the windmills or one of those other, what you call
A sugar mill. And,
sugar mill and have the whole process, you know,
Right.
actually live the process,
Right.
see this big wheel moving,
And-
taking up water and then causing it to move and so on, a stream running on the blades of this fan.
And that is not
thing.
far-fetched at all. I mean, when we think about new attractions, then we can talk about bringing back some of these old artifacts to life. And, you know, I mean, the landscape now is ever changing because, again, as I said, Tobago has to be able to put its head above water when it comes to tourism. What makes us unique? So it can't just be sun, and sea. You can't sell sun, and sea 365 days in the year. You have to be able to say and amplify what else makes you special. And there's so many things that makes us special, so many things that are unique to us. And we must be able as a people to tell those stories.
Let us go to some of the things. Blue food, you have any change to make with blue food and heritage, or any suggestions how we're going to reform blue food or make it even better?
So, I mean, I'm always of the view that communities need to own their products. I mean, Blue Food celebrated 25 years this year.
It's 2 days or 1 day now?
It used to be, I think they toyed with a weekend thing and that didn't really to work out, so they went back to the 1 day thing. What's happening with Blue Food is that we're currently building out a permanent Blue Food site. So that will be the same area. So next year you're going to have a proper Blue Food build out. It will no longer be tents and, you know, bringing in stage and stuff. All of there will be permanent fixtures, landscaping, that kind of thing.
The money for that?
So the money will come, the Lord will provide. But it's already in construction. So it should be finished, I think, somewhere early next year for us to be able to cut a ribbon and say this is a permanent Blue Food site. But more than that, I think that I see the festival.
And it caters for things, a basic thing like parking?
Yes, all of those things, all of those amenities would be part of the thing. But in terms of the actual festival itself, I mean, I would want to see, honestly, that an entire industry grow out of the thing. Because I think the idea of having the event, having the festival, was one to showcase the versatility of the product, the versatility of the root crop. But more than that, are we exporting? You know, are we going into export markets? And for me, not the event is one thing, and that's good. It's great. It has grown over the years. It has its market now. It has its place in the calendar.
A distinct linkage with agriculture.
Yes.
So we must not hear people saying, well, you know, I want to bring in Dasheen or bring in something from outside. And
So where are the fields of Dasheen that we are growing? Where are the different species that we are cultivating? Who are we exporting to? Is Tobago becoming the breadbasket of Trinidad and Tobago again? Because we once were. I mean, the idea is to not just have a festival for 1 day a year, everybody go up to Bloody Bay and eat and have a good time. But how are we creating sustainable jobs out of this thing? And there must be a sustainable industry that has to be created. So that even if you're not talking about the raw product, which is the Dasheen in the ground, how are we advertising or creating a cottage industry out of the things like the breads and the cakes and the pones and the different things that we have been able to create with the Dasheen, the ice cream? And who are we advertising and who are we selling these products to? And
can we make these things in the necessary quantities and quality so that we can export them and have them?
So for me, it's not just enough to have the event. We need to create sustainable jobs, sustainable community tourism out of the thing. Because one of the things that we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this fiscal year is building out sustainable community and community-based tourism. And the Blue Food is a very good example of where we can start, because the community of Bloody Bay could now be growing the crop, reaping the crop. They're now taking the crop and turning it into the different products. Those products are being shipped throughout Tobago in different supermarkets and in different places for people to buy. So if you're in Tobago in May and you want to taste Dasheen ice cream, you must be able to walk in Penny Savers and buy mischance Dasheen ice cream. You shouldn't just have to wait for one day in the year to eat this Dasheen ice cream. We must be able to see it on shelves. We must be able to go in Massey in Trinidad and see the Dasheen bread and the Dasheen cake and the Dasheen pone and the Dasheen ice cream and all of these things.
Alcohol,
And we
wine,
know
dine.
that it is made in Tobago. How are we getting people into processing? How are we getting people into supplying the raw materials? So yes, the excitement is generated because of the event,
And
but
there's
what
a link
happens
in all
after
this
the
thing
event?
with other
Yes,
divisions, BDU
yes.
have to be more
BDU.
flexible and deal with some of these.
We
giving
have to
people
be
these,
able
whether
to
it's grants or
create the-
special
yes,
loans to
in
do these
terms of
things and
getting
so
the
on.
equipment
BDU
and
still
that kind
have
of
too
thing.
many limitations.
We
you
have
know?
to make the policies a lot more flexible, and in the even if it is in the short term, because we have to stimulate the creation of other industries. The THA cannot be God on the island of Tobago. The private sector really has to step up, and that stepping up has to be supported by policies of the THA. We have to make sure and make proper investments, but people also have to be passionate and committed. It can't be that you're going in business to fail in the first 2 years. The statistics for failure rate is, for most new businesses, is something in the region of 90% at least. So when you look at such a high failure rate, which means 9 in 10 businesses fail in the first 2 years, it means that there's a lot that we still have to do in terms of training people to get into business, in terms of culturing a particular mindset. I was just at the launch of the Tobago Advisory Business Services as part of the Tobago Chamber of Commerce. And what they're trying to do is get businesses on board with that type of training that they need to survive in business. And the banks are on board, and the persons who are mentors in the business field are on board, and the people who have been doing it for years are on board. And it means that if you have all this support in a one-stop shop and supported by the THA in terms of us making investments to make sure that it works, it means that more people have options. If you have a skill and you can make jewelry, you can make soap, you can make draperies, you can make chairs. Community development is having their graduation this afternoon. Another cycle of persons are going to be trained. How many of these people are moving into businesses? How many of these people are becoming entrepreneurs? How many of these people are leaving the THA to go into business full time so that we could continue to build our private sector? We have to connect the dots. We have to, get the thing flowing so that people have more options.
Tashia, we need to go for another break, and when we come back, I want us to touch on the heritage and, of course, going to the Carnival.
Okay.
Okay. We go for a break, and we'll be right back.
Arise, the energy fill the skies. I say, thanks for
Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. I know you may have other options, but this is a very interesting discussion we're having here this morning with Councillor Tashia Burris, the Secretary for Transport, Tourism, Antiquities, and so on. We need to talk a little bit about the heritage,
Yes.
and before we move on to things like the Carnival and the airlift and
Yes,
these
we
big
have so
issues.
many things to talk about. I mean, coming in and having kind of heritage 2 years in a row, and being able to see how the heritage has evolved. I think, one, we have to have a conversation with the people of Tobago regarding, what does heritage mean to them? And is heritage still relevant today to the people of Tobago? Because I think we've so gotten used to the production type or the production style setup of the Heritage Festival, and I know that it looks very different to what the festival started. Its beginnings very, very different. And the beginnings of the Heritage Festival was largely supported by private sector, very minimal involvement in the state. Now the opposite is true, but I feel personally that the heritage has to be owned by the communities, and more than just the
Owned by the
productions
communities and supported by the
supported
private
by
sector
the private
and the
sector
THA.
and the THA together. So not the THA bringing 100% to the table. But also, I think that there has to be a conversation, a deeper conversation about what heritage means to us in terms of the stories that we tell. Not all the stories are happy stories. Not all the stories are funny stories. Not all the stories are entertaining stories. Are we ready to have those conversations that interrogate the part parts of our history that are not so happy, not so entertaining, not so funny, because there is value in really learning about where we have come from and how far we have come. And sometimes that requires very uncomfortable conversation. So what I would like to see is that even though we want to amplify all the good and all the happy and all the entertaining, that we have an opportunity to also showcase the darker sides, the not so happy sides of our history, so that we're able to, you know, bring balance to both sides of the equation. Yes, but certainly moving towards that community ownership again is ultimately the plan.
Yeah, you know, when I was much younger, we had in the THA the conference on culture. That is what gave birth to the idea of heritage and that sort of thing, you know, in the early 80s. But maybe a serious consultation again, maybe to review our heritage,
that might be
heritage
very
culture.
necessary
And bring all these key stakeholders, and you'll have much more people coming on board, even some of the sponsors, you know, to have that kind of consultation
and
could be
actually,
very fruitful.
and the elders in particular as well, because I feel that we're losing our living museums, and you know, we have to document their stories and document their perspectives, and I think something like that is very, very critical and very important for us to be able to do, because there will be some point in time 10 years from now where a young person is asking, how did the heritage start? We must be able to show them the beginnings. We must be able to show them the actual words, the actual speeches, the actual, you know, conversations that were held by these people who were part of the birth of this thing, and you know, so that they have that background.
Some of these things are recorded, I'm not too sure the quality, of course, you know, will not be the quality we have today. And then the other thing, those who want some big reels and some big tapes and so on.
So
and you have to know part of the project should be converted these
to be the
videos into digital.
So part of the work of Antiquities will do all of that, because we have to create a library. We have to create a digital library alongside the actual physical libraries that we have. But that digital library is very important, because it would mean that we're making sure that we salvage what we have and we can save it for the future.
But you have an advisor that he alone could do all these things?
No. He has to build out, his work is to build out the administrative set of what is required for the work to get done. Because we know what the work is. We're very clear on what the work is. Now we have to find bodies to put in the space. The challenge with Antiquities, however, is it's not an area that a lot of people have studied. So that you may find that the first set of people who are employed in that department may not necessarily be Tobagonians. But a conversation has already started with the education division in terms of probably offering scholarships and probably seeing how we can channel some young people into that area, so that in a couple years' time we can have some Tobagonians taking up those positions.
Well, National Carnival, the Tobago Carnival is a big thing. You made your mark in the two years, and I don't know how you're going to try to make it even better, but you know, you still could have...
The people will do that. Listen, I think I
must commend you and the division for pushing and having the carnival, the Tobago Carnival, look where it is and bring it to where it is in 2 years.
Well,
phenomenal.
I would be very wrong to say it was me alone. I had a very phenomenal, dedicated team of persons who work in our divisions and our companies. I'm not yet ready to reveal who those people are, but they know who they are. They know that they burn the midnight oil and burn the candle on both ends to bring the carnival this year into the forefront, the way that it was brought into the forefront. But certainly we could not do it by ourselves. We had to be supported by the different stakeholders, the Tobago October Carnival Association, TUCO, Pantrinbago, the private sector who stepped up, the TTPS and ACP Collis Hazel, TMA and all of the different arms of national security, the telecommunications providers, T&Tech. I mean, there was a whole host of persons. So the media, yes, of course, the role of the media is very important. But you know, all of the people who literally kind of said, you know what, we have to own this thing. This is we Carnival. And we have to put on the best show that Tobago can put on. And I worked on Carnival Day. I mean, I didn't get to enjoy myself. I was there making sure things were happening with the parade and just making sure everybody was okay. Because for me, the job is never done. In fact, the Carnival is not over. I tell people the event is not over until everybody's paid. So the event is not over because we still
But
have
you're
to
working
pay
on
some
that because,
people.
you know, there'll be little
Yes,
complaints about
no,
that from
no. This year has been a lot smoother. People don't get paid already. I ain't hearing nothing. People don't get paid already. So, I mean, a lot of things that we had to learn, you know, we learned this year, and I think we were able to improve over last year. But there's still more improvement. I would not
we're
give us
looking
a 10
forward to
out of
that
10 at all.
and so on. But I want to get to tourism before we run out of time, although we have a little extra time. We thank you guys for doing that,
staying with
especially
us.
given the guests we have on Saturday. The destination. Tobago was a destination. We won awards recently.
Yes.
We're happy about that. Congratulations to you and your team as well for getting that. But we have to do certain things about this destination. We have to get people here. We have to try to tell people how to treat with welcoming people.
Yes.
You have to tell people who provide transport, you know, whether you're Adventist or not. You have to try and find some way to get
They're trying to
alternative
be
transport or means of transport, you know. You have to tell drivers. I saw a fella puncture the other day with the tourists in it, and the spare tire, I tell you, was so shameful to see the child. You know, all these little things we had to pay some attention to. How the general community interact with this destination to make it what it is and to make it better.
So I
Just
said
about 3
something-
minutes to talk about this
I
destination.
said something earlier. I said something earlier. It speaks to pride. Pride. Tobago is not for Tobagonians alone anymore. Maybe at some point in time it was. But we have something that people want to see and experience and feel and enjoy and immerse themselves in. So are we telling people, come and see, you know, the new heritage song, come and see, come and see. We want them to come and see, but not just see. We have to make sure we're ready to welcome them. And I
have them
like to
participate
talk
as well.
about putting on your harvest face. I just call it that. Because harvest time is the time when you could go in a Tobagonian house and they wine and dine you, and you know, you come as a stranger and you leave as family. We had to find a way to turn that on 365 days in the year. You had to put on your harvest face. Because harvest, I think, represents the best of who we are. The best behavior that we put on. So that the same thing that you talk about, you know, a driver who driving tourists, anything can happen. Make sure you spare tire in a gear.
Make sure things
And these are,
working and make
listen,
sure the
customer
people
service
comfortable.
training can't deal with that, you know. That speaks about pride in yourself. That when you get up in the morning, you make sure take a nice shower, you iron your shirt properly, you put it on and it's sitting on your good. You go and you greet the guests with a nice smile, and you make sure that they have such an exceptional experience that by the time they leave, they're ready to come back. They could only say great things about the destination, only say great things about you. We have to
Some
get
years
to
ago, we
Tobagonian
had a situation
pride.
where on a cruise ship, a guy and his family took a tour to go, I think, somewhere around Scarborough to Plymouth and come back, and so on. And the guy came back livid, the tourists and the family, because the driver took him to where they tell him to take them and did not say a single word. You could imagine that? The man was livid. They had to give back the money, the man, and so on. But the problem was that the guy used to stammer or stutter.
Oh, okay.
So he was kind of a little embarrassed to see
he
anything
was
because he was stuttering.
self-conscious.
And you had to realize that, you know, if you have a driver who is stuttering and so on, maybe give him a short trip or something. You know, you don't put him on these long trips where he's afraid to talk and stuttering. You know, you have to look at all these, what you might consider little things, but they're little nuisances, anything that you could put the man there to help to arrange the transport, who get into what vehicle and that sort of thing, instead of putting him on a job to take people around to see the beauty of the island.
So I would tell you that that's how my brain works. The little things are the big things with me. Yeah? So, for example, when I walked into the whole cruise ship situation that morning, because I just come back from London the night before. So I was in the air for 9 hours. So even if I had gotten a message that something might have been amiss, I would not have gotten that message till I arrived that night. And even then, there was nothing that I can do. I got on the port and then I realized everybody's face looking long. And asking what's happening, because we came for the plaque exchange. It's the first time the ship has come. And then I realized that there was some major fallout with the tours. Now I tell you, I used to work on the port, so I know buses are supposed to be there for 6 a.m. even though because tours start at 8, people start coming off at around 7:30 after immigration does what they have to do.
Clear them.
So that if buses are not on the port by 6:30, you already know something is wrong, because your morning tours are thrown off, because the buses have to come early to get their stickers, to get their guides assigned, different kinds of things. So you have to make sure
I think they
everything
have to
is
be
fine.
kind of inspected too.
Well, those inspections happen before, but there's also a morning inspection that happens. So that is why they have to be there 2 hours before the first scheduled tour.
Oh, good.
So that if buses are not there by 6:30, you already know something's amiss. So I get on the port at 9, everybody's face is long, and I realize that things have gone left. By that time, tours have already been cancelled. And now I have to go on this ship and hand over this plaque and smile and take a picture, and then have to deal with the complaints after. And for me, it was a very embarrassing position to be in as Secretary of Tourism, certainly, because, I mean, again, I don't ever do anything to fail. So if up to the day before, I'm being told that everything is okay and that we're all set, and then something major happens on the day of, then I want to know what happened. I need some answers. In any case, at that point, there's physically nothing that I can do, because I can't pull buses out of the air, and I can't uncancel the tours. They've already started refunding people. And the only thing that I could have thought of, well, if I was a cruise ship passenger, right, what would make me feel a little better about the situation? I put myself in the shoes of the passenger, not necessarily the ship, not necessarily the crew, the tour people or the bus people or whatever. I put myself in the shoes of a passenger, and I walked down to the deck where they were giving the refunds. Nobody was cussing, everybody was taking back their money quietly and whatever. But in my mind, I'm like, what would I have liked? And I said, you know what, a personal apology. That I would feel good if a destination reached out to me and say, look, I'm so sorry that you couldn't enjoy this destination today. And that's what I did. I left the ship, went back to the office. It was just myself, the tourism manager, one of the security guards, and Mr. Wilson, my very, very plucky, hardworking marketing officer for transport. And we went and I wrote this letter of apology, signed it, print 350 copies of it. And we packed 350 gift bags for these affected passengers. And the thing is that some...
So we have gift bags that already?
No, we have stock, like promotional items in the division. And we dropped them back at the port that afternoon before the ship left. So that every single passenger who had their tour cancelled should have gotten that letter of apology and that gift bag with a Tobago branded item. Now, some people may really appreciate it. Some people mightn't think too hoots about it. But I'll tell you that when you're walking around a destination and the place hot, you're happy for that Tobago Beyond umbrella to walk around with. So from a marketing perspective, all these Tobago Beyond goodies are all over the world now, because the passengers come from all over. But bigger than that, I think that as a secretary, at the end of the day, even if it was not my fault, I had to take responsibility. That's one. The second thing is that you have to treat with the fallout immediately. So if you can do something to treat with the fallout immediately, you do that. And then when that is done, you treat with all the other things. Figure out what went wrong, who went wrong, why it went wrong, and make sure that the thing doesn't happen again. And I'm pleased to say that the Silhouette came back over the weekend, and we had
Saturday.
more people on tour this time. We had 834 people to go on tour, and the operation went like butter. They
So
actually
where were the
said
buses from?
the buses, we pulled them from the two current associations. They were able to get some more buses into the system over for the weekend, and we also had to pull the resources from across the divisions to be able to
How
utilize
many
those
buses
as
you got
well.
from the different divisions?
We got about
4 or 5?
8 in total.
What?
Yeah,
And they were in
so
good condition?
of course, yes, we take care of our things. Yeah, so we had 42
But who
buses in
drove
total.
them then?
The drivers from the divisions, these are government resources, so the drivers have to come out and
you
stuff.
Could give them with the government. These are trained people to take tourists around?
Well, they have tour guides, so
Oh,
tour
on
guides are
board,
on
on
the
board the
boards.
bus.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
right,
So
right.
they're not expected to do anything other than drive. Yes, so we were able to successfully take 834 persons on tour, and that augurs well for Tobago as a destination, because the ships want to sell more tours. They have more tours, more varied tours in terms of the different packages, whether you're going to Pigeon Point, Cocoa Estate, you're going up to Blue Waters, all over the island. There are different things to see and do, and we want to be able to showcase different parts of our island to the people who visit. So seeing that we're able to rise to the occasion and make sure that we have treated with the challenges that could come up when it comes to being able to provide transportation, it means that Tobago could continue to showcase itself as a cruise ship destination that is growing.
So the communication is much better with respect to you and the different stakeholders involved in the cruise ship business.
Well, there was
to
never any
minimize-
issue with communication.
It
The
just
sad
happened, they
thing
wasn't
is,
prepared for it.
the sad thing is that you can only go on what someone tells you. If we had a meeting prior and everyone said, you know, they will bring to the table what is necessary for the thing to be successful. And if on the day something happens that no one could have reasonably planned for, at the end of the day, our responsibility is to ensure that we will prevent it from happening again. So we will have fail-safes, we will have backup plans, we will have plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D, because this situation really damaged our reputation. I had to spend some time on the phone with executives from some of the cruise ships to assure them that, you know, Tobago is serious about tourism, we're serious about cruise shipping,
We
and
have
that we will
about
do what we
2
have
more
to.
minutes, about 5 more minutes
5
again,
minutes.
and the pressure in us, boy. The airlift and the hotel rooms are two things that I wanted to conclude.
So,
Conclude
plenty
it.
plans. I don't know how I stay awake because there's so many things to do. When you look at the fact that about 80% of our room stock on the island is locally owned, which is very
80%.
different to what happens in other Caribbean islands. The majority of hotel accommodation is owned by foreigners, foreign
other
brands in other islands, foreign brands, foreign owners, you know, from Airbnbs to large hotels. In Tobago, the opposite is true. The majority of our accommodation is locally
But that
owned.
speaks to development.
Exactly, and it speaks to
people
how
taking control over the
community,
destination.
yes. So it's something that we have to sell because that is a unique selling point in of itself. Because there are people who travel with the idea that they want to contribute to our local economy and they want to stay at a locally owned establishment. So that is in and of itself something that we can market. That Tobago is a place where you will come and you will stay at locally owned establishments. But just because it's locally owned doesn't mean that it doesn't have a global view and a global outlook and a global management. So that you can walk into a locally owned establishment, but it looks like a 5-star luxury accommodation. And this is where we want to get our people to, because we are competing with established brands. We're competing with established destinations, very mature. Tobago has the opportunity.
How much rooms we have now?
So working room stock is somewhere between 32 to 3,800, and when I say working, there are different reasons why room stock could be pulled out of the system, you know, for renovations or things like that, or people might be temporarily closing down their establishments. Like if they're not on island, they will close their establishment, leave, and then come back. So you have a working room stock of between 32 and 38, but ideally Tobago's ideal number is something like 5,000 rooms. Yeah, just over 5,000 rooms. But in terms of what is happening next year, there's a schedule to be the breaking of ground for the Secrets and Dreams Resort at Killigwint Bay, which is a 500-room establishment. We have the Elephant Tree Hotel and Villas in the east of Tobago in Roxborough. They've already broken ground. They're in the middle of construction, and they are going to have a small hotel of about 40 rooms, and then they have a villa development that is going to put an additional 126 rooms, I think, into the room stock. But outside of that, we really want to encourage persons to get involved in the accommodation sector. So right now I'm working on a policy.
That will be ready.
Manta Lodge. So Manta Lodge is actually in the process of
many
being
rooms
ready
there?
to be open. So it's 20 rooms at Manta Lodge.
They really cater for diving or just particularly any?
It would be marketed as a dive hotel. We had the opportunity to stay there when we went on retreat. Because you're now in the space, you could recognize where there's some things that need to be done, some little tweaks and stuff. So they're still doing some minor fixes. Yes. Very, very comfortable. Very scenic views, certainly. The sea's right there, so it allows you to sleep. But just some minor fixes that have to be done to make it ready for opening somewhere in January of 2024. But outside of those three, I really want to encourage more persons to get into the accommodation sector, even if it's 1 room, 2 rooms, 3 rooms. Airbnb is a big thing now. A lot of people travel and use Airbnb, and it's a model that I think that could work for Tobago. It's just how do we get persons into this space? So now we have to have a conversation with that same BVU, have a conversation with NIDCO, have a conversation with even ourselves in terms of what votes we can use to try to have a program in place to get people to now upgrade their smaller accommodations. And these are places with between 1 and 5 rooms. Yes, put on extensions so that you could give that home stay kind of feel, that bed and breakfast kind of feel. Because the thing that really sells Tobago, the model that we have that has been working is that Castara model. There are no hotels in Castara. There are no large properties in Castara.
I met a man the other day, 15 or 13 years, he tell me he come into Castara.
Religiously, and you will get those stories. They don't come to Tobago, they come to Castara.
Yes.
Because they bypass everything else and they go there. Because you get so many things when you stay in communities like Castara. And Castara is not the only one of its kind. You have Buku that has its nuances. You have Plymouth, Blackrock that has its own personality. You have Speyside and Charlottesville that gives you a different feel of the island. So we have communities that we could build out those types of products in already. What we have to do is get an idea of what the assets are, the natural assets that we can have attractions around, and then encourage the rest of the community to get involved.
Like that. If you only have about 2 more minutes, 3 more minutes.
Oh boy. Well,
airlift
is what airlift is. Airlift is what it is for us right now. I mean, CAL is our main carrier. We do have our international connections via BA and Condor, and we are looking for more at this time. We're trying to get into the Scandinavian market again. But in addition to that, we are looking at seeing what regional carriers could come into this space to provide some more additional airlift to Tobago. So we're having conversations with regional carriers out of Grenada and St. Vincent and even Guyana to see how we could establish connections to those territories over the next year. But there's so much work to do, Mr. Mcfarlane, so much work to do. And I mean, I just want to tell, as we wrap up, I just want to tell the people of Tobago that you have a working secretary. I don't go to sleep any night without asking myself, did I do the best that I could have today? Could I have done more? And it actually haunts my dreams. I've had not one night of good rest since I've been in this job. And I know I will not have one night of good rest until I feel as if we are in the place that we need to be. We are some ways away from that, but every step that we take forward is a step that we get closer to that victory, and that victory is not mine alone. It's a victory for the people of Tobago. If we say that tourism is what we want, we need to take pride in ourselves, take pride in what we're trying to sell to people, take pride in having an island that we could be proud of and that Tobago could be proud to visit. And that's the most important thing. Let's take pride in everything that we do. Nothing is too small. No job is too big. That if we do it together, it will get done. And that's what I want to say. I continue to thank my colleagues, the Chief Secretary, for having confidence in me despite all the trials and tribulations that we have faced. And I thank the people of Tobago for your support wherever you are. I get the messages, I get the prayers, I get the random texts from weird numbers, saying, you're doing a good job, don't give up, don't study the naysayers. The negativity gets to you sometimes.
Tell the Secretary that there's a document he has in his possession that you need to treat with
I will let him know that, yes.
Tell him Gerry Mcfarlane said the document he has in his hand, you need to treat with it
I will tell him that. But I just want the people of Tobago to know that you have an administration that is committed. If nothing else, we are committed to the growth of this island. If nothing else, we are committed to the progress of our people.
And I like how you're just coping, you're dealing with the challenges, and you're turning them into
take them as they come,
and so on.
With a smile on your face, as much as possible. I always try to maintain a very positive outlook. If you have to cuss me on social media, I will never see it because I'm not there. And I don't let negativity penetrate my mind. My mind is a very sacred place. My heart is a very sacred place as well. And that's what keeps me going. Negativity can't get to me. People could say what they want, but they didn't make me and they can't break me. So I will continue to do the thing that needs to be done. I will continue to listen to good advice. I will continue to take constructive criticism. I will continue to listen to all suggestions regardless of where they come from, because at the end of the day, we all want what is best for this island. And as long as you want what is best for this island, you have my ears and you have my support. And as long as we have the support of the people of Tobago, then we can't fail.
Yeah. Councillor Burris, I want to thank you immensely.
Not a problem.
This has been one of the better.
Yes.
I don't want to say that to dismiss
interview.
the other persons who were here.
No.
But it was really informative, and it shows the level of commitment that you have, and the drive and the determination, and I see the change agent in you to try and change things and make things not just different, but making it better
Yes,
for this little island on the planet
Yes,
that we have to become and work towards having.
Yes.
This to be the best little island on the planet.
Certainly.
Thank you again, Councillor.
Not a problem.
And
So
I
much.
surely will keep in touch with you with some of these other matters, so some of which I'm pursuing personally, and so on. So we'll have other things to discuss
Yes, we have
from
other
time
things
to
to
time.
discuss. Yes.
Thanks again. Have a lovely day, and I wish you all God's blessings
you so
and
much.
greater productivity in your division and what you do here in Tobago.
Thank you.
Folks, that's to the end of this program today, and of course tomorrow I think we have Abby Taylor, the presiding officer of the Tobago House of Assembly. She'll be here to tell you about her stories and her challenges and even her successes. I don't know if she wants to talk about putting people out or having people out of the chamber, but these and other issues will be discussed with Abby Taylor tomorrow. So see you. Have a blessed week ahead, and then we see you tomorrow, God's willing.